This is Joe Cole.
This is Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and you're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
Welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. Today, covering off on Chelsea 6, Manchester United 1. A great away win for the Chelsea women. I am your fourth choice host with the most, can't even say it anymore, joined by my partners in crime, Abdullah and Jessy, to yet again break down another incredible win for Chelsea against the Red Devils. Look, guys, this was a lot of fun. We're going to cover off on all of the details of the rampant is a great word choice here win against Manchester United. The front three really looking good and gelling. We're going to talk about the midfield pivot and the Ingle Leupolz double pivot and see if that was a little bit more solid. And then we'll talk about the back three as well. We got to get everybody involved for such a comprehensive team performance. So that's what's to come. What's happening right now is the three-word match review, the patented, the only, often imitated, never duplicated three-word match review. And we have a couple really good ones straight out of the gate. We'll touch on the first one in a little bit more detail once we go through Emma's quotes after the game. But from Ghana Zingina, 30, Emma, need better than a 6-1. Okay, sure. Mike from Rhode Island, statement of intent. It's a great one. And then Techie Tiger, front three, dangerous. Absolutely. Schlauby Fox, Chelsea support, brilliant. You could definitely hear him on the TV this morning. So well done to those who traveled all the way up to the Lee Sports Complex. And then CFC Central with probably my favorite one, Red Devils exercise. So we're bringing in all sorts of just tremendous magic into this one. Abdullah, I'm going straight to you for our three-word match reviews. What do you got?
For me, it's Harder rises again. It's just second week in a row. I'm rather even third week. She's just getting better and better every game. She finally looks like she's settling into that side in this system. So for me, it's Pernille Harder once again.
Jessy, what do you got?
I'm going with Skinner's ship sunk, which I had to say quite carefully, actually. That was harder to say than I thought it was going to be when I wrote it down. But yeah, Mark Skinner, he's back in the WSL. I feel like he's had a bit of confidence, and it was just kind of nice to see that deflate out of him.
Deflate it did, and that is because of my three-word match review straight out of the gate. Fran's Nifty 50.
Love that rhyme.
We're getting right into it. Fran Kirby hits 50 WSL goals. Look, I mean, she is the reigning player of the year. She's been Chelsea's best player for almost as many years as she's been at the club. Tom Gary reporting that Emma Hayes kind of said after the match where she reached her 50th WSL goal, which was a very easy one, by the way, that I've run out of words to say about this special player. Taking the easy way out, Jessy. She's just like, look, you saw her. Do something with
Yeah,
her.
I mean, at this point, you can just point at her. Although I did think it was, ironic of all the amazing goals Fran has scored over the years, for this to be her 50th, the easiest one possibly. But yeah, I mean, what a legend. And, I feel like Emma Hayes is, by running out of words, almost doing herself down as well, because I think she's played such an amazing part in Fran's journey to the very top of the club. And it's just great to see her on fire.
Oh, Abdullah, and she's in a pretty exclusive club here, right? Miedema in that club, but there are not a ton of players with this type of pedigree.
Oh, definitely. I mean, considering the number of games that are played in a single season, which, considering there's only a finite number of teams, and they play across the season, to be in the category of 50 goals plus is exclusive, and you've got to be at a Miedema, at a Fran Kirby level to be able to replicate this sort of thing. And not to mention that the amount of the turnover that we have in women's football, with the players leaving after probably 1 to 2 seasons, it kind of shows the longevity and the and kind of the class of both, of Fran Kirby especially, but then also players like Miedema, who were able to stick around for such a long time and be able to showcase their skills in England.
And considering that Fran has not played as a sole striker very much in her career, I should say, tells you that, she's been deployed out wide. She's been a part of a front two. She's been a part of a front three. She has just absolutely raised her game to an excellent level. So we do want to say a hearty congratulations to Fran Kirby on reaching a tremendous milestone in the WSL. Now, look, we have to go into the match and get our breakdown. So I'm going to pass it over to Jessy for the lineup here in a second. But we are talking about the Manchester United away match that was on Sunday, September 26th. See, script bomb right there, Abdullah. Dang it. Sunday, September 26th. It wasn't WSL. It was at Leeds Sports Village. Manchester United won. Chelsea 6, a casual 6 on the road. 2 goals from Kerr, Kirby, Harder, Spence, and Fleming, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So, Jessy, break down the lineup and let the people know what we went out with.
Yeah, so a bit of a familiar one at the back for us again. So we had AKB in goal, standard, and then the back three of Eriksson, Jess Carter, and Millie Bright. Guro Reiten kept hold of her left wing back position, but we brought Niamh Charles in to play on the right. Erin Cuthbert picked up a bit of a knock to the head and in the Scotland game. Don't really know what the situation is there. She was kind of stretchered off, so Niamh came back in to play right wing back. And then we had the double pivot of Leupolz and Ingle. Ji So-yeon was had a later international game, so be interesting to see whether that choice was, tactical or motivated by her absence. And then that tasty front three of Pernille Harder, Sam Kerr, Fran Kirby. Appearances later on in the game from Jonna Anderson came on at right wing back, and then we also saw Beth England, Jessie Fleming, Drew Spence, and Georgia Fox all picking up 10 or so minutes at the end of the game.
The 5 sub rule coming into effect again for Chelsea. Look, Abdullah, we got to get over to the stats here. I mean, this might not have played out in what you would have thought from a possession standpoint, but Chelsea just did the most they could with as best possession as they could.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I was kind of shocked to see myself when you see Manchester United had 51.1% of possession and Chelsea only 48.9%, which you don't associate Chelsea with having less possession than the other team. But I think in some sense it maybe represents a little bit of an evolution in terms of the way they're playing, in terms of their adaptability against teams that are probably going to be a little bit more possession oriented. I mean, obviously United didn't seem like the biggest test in hindsight, but it's still good to see that they were able to score this many goals on the counterattack without actually having the majority of possession. But 16 shots compared to United's 13, and we'll get onto the defensive part later and the frequency there. But 9 on target, so the accuracy was good compared to United's 2. 6 off target and compared to 7. They had 1 block compared to 4. A slightly lower passing accuracy of 75.8 compared to 77.5, which I think comes down to the fact of when they had less possession, more counterattacking, so a little bit more quicker passing exchanges. So you might expect a little bit of a misplaced pass here and there, considering they don't really play the style. 4 clear-cut chances, which I guess is really good considering they scored 6 goals. So that's their 4 corners apiece, 1 offside compared to 3. 66.7% on the tackle ratio, which again slightly lower than United's, which I think we'll get into later when we talk about midfield. A higher percentage in aerial duels at 56, obviously because United had more possession. 1 save, surprisingly, for Anne Katrin-Berger, considering there were 2 shots on target for United. 1 hit the bar and 1 was a save. So, that's not too bad. 4 fouls committed, 6 fouls won for Chelsea. And then there were surprisingly no cards in this game for either side. So, here we are.
Yeah, Chelsea kind of broke their spirit early on. It wasn't as spiky as we might have thought of. We're going to take a quick break, get it out of the way so we can get into the match analysis here. But just a quick reminder, right? We're covering the team every week. It'll be out on the Monday or the Tuesday. Come join us. Leave a 5-star review. It helps kind of get these episodes out into the world a little bit more. We've had a really strong start to the season, so thank you for tuning in at the beginning here. And then, obviously, if you are so inclined and want to join us on Patreon at either the $3 or $5 level, there's a wonderful, wonderful Chelsea women's community on our Discord. So please do that. All right, we'll be right back after a quick break from these sponsors. All right, guys, we're back, and we're going to be talking about just a dominant Chelsea attack, aided by some just absurd passing from Manchester United, obviously. But this was easily our best performance of the season, which is, I think going back to our preview, we noted after an international break and going to United, this should have been one of Chelsea's tougher games of the season, kind of all factors included. It ended up being just a stroll in the park, right, Jessy? So I guess let's talk about maybe the overall front three performance, and then I'll pass it to Abdullah to talk about Pernille Harder in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one because on the one hand, it does feel very reminiscent of that Everton game from before the international break, us being really able to capitalize on another team's errors. But at the same time, like the clinical nature of how we did that is just so impressive, and it's something that we've kind of come to expect from Kerr, Kirby and Harder and what that front three represents. But it's we shouldn't ignore how impressive it is that they do that. Other teams can get those opportunities. You even saw Man United pick up a couple of opportunities in similar situations and they can't put them away, and you put yourself in a fantastic position where if you're 3-0 up at half time, like you are going into the second half feeling like more relaxed or whatever. When those spaces do open up, you're not as worried. And we'll come on to Emma Hayes' comments a bit later, I think, but I can see where she's coming from. I did think there were elements of the performance that were sloppy, but what was great was the fact that because we were so clinical going forward, that when those errors happened, we were immediately able to capitalize on them. Sam Kerr should really have potentially scored within 30 seconds. And it took us 90 seconds to actually score, and that's what makes this team so dominant, I think, in the WSL, especially because when they come up against teams, those teams start to panic because they know what that high press looks like. And ultimately, that makes them more susceptible to the high press.
Yeah, and I think for me, it was just so strange that United decided that they were going to play tiki-taka out of the back against this high press. I mean, it was a recipe for absolute disaster, highlighted by, I think, Pernille Harder, Abdullah, who absolutely pressed with efficiency, took her extraordinary, 50-yard run and shot very well, but was just an absolute monster all over the place today.
Absolutely insane. I mean, I legitimately had to stop working at work and kind of tell people to go away so I could just watch that period of 10 minutes where Harder was just on fire. I've seen her press, and obviously she's been, weirdly enough, the player that has pressed the most last season. We've seen it in the stats compared to the season before. But it just seems like this season Emma Hayes has kind of come in, and rather, I don't even think it's Emma Hayes. I think Harder has a full season under her belt with this new role. And I think now that she's gotten to grips with it and she's had that first 1 or 2 games to kind of settle into the new season, I think now we're just starting to see Pernille Harder just get better and better in each game. And I think finally it's a mixture of Harder understanding and really playing the role as this trequartista, number 10, 9.5, as I like to call it, in there between Kirby and Kerr. But it's but last season she was doing it to facilitate the front two. But it seems like this time she's able to both facilitate, but then also score the goals herself. She's already scored in against Arsenal. She scored this week again. And then just the work, she was tracking back to the halfway line, to the defensive third to kind of pick up the ball and run all the way back. And, to get Pernille Harder, who back, in her Wolfsburg days was pretty much, I'm up front, you bring the ball to me, I will do the rest. It's night and day, and it's a testament to the man management of Emma Hayes. But today, I think it's just probably one of her best performances, I think, in her Chelsea career, and arguably as a front three, I don't think I've ever seen them play off the ball as well as they had against United. I mean, poor passing from the United team at the back, trying to play out from the back, but I don't understand when it doesn't work. When you conceded one, probably 2 goals, you probably should stop after that and not continue. But maybe it was the Skinner's Guardiola telling him, keep doing it. It's fine. You can make a mistake and you can keep going. So it is what it is.
Well, yeah, let's talk about the selflessness, I think, of the front three, Jessy, because, of course, Kerr lays off to Kirby for an easy one, right? The favor is returned, as it often was last season, later in the match, where Kirby could have easily shot, but just laid it off for an easy Kerr goal. I mean, they're all three excellent players in their own right, but they have developed such a rapport and such a selfless work ethic that to me, it makes them even more dangerous. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, and I think it makes them more dangerous because they choose to create better opportunities. In both those situations that we're talking about, both players create tap-ins for each other from situations where, they could have shot, they might have scored. They're both, great at taking shots, but you turn those kind of opportunities, which, in XG terms might be looking at a 0.2, 0.3 into opportunities which are 0.7, 0.8 or whatever. And, that's kind of in some ways the logic of expected goals, to be able to understand where those better opportunities are. But I think also what I really felt like stood out today was, with Harder now on this kind of inside left forward role, how much more flexible the rotation between all three of them was across the front line. I think we did see it last season, but it felt like mainly it would be Kerr or Kirby would like come across into different sides, or maybe Kirby and Harder would switch. But I don't think we really saw them move so fluidly as a trio. It always felt there was two and one would still hold their position. And that was what really stood out to me today. And I think also that speaks to that same selflessness you're picking up on, Nick, because that's also about, like, it doesn't matter who's technically leading the line, who's in that number 9 role. It doesn't matter who's pulling out wide to pick up the ball, because for them it is about the team and it's just about creating those best opportunities. And that's incredibly rare to see in football in general,
Of course, yeah. I mean, I think in a lot of sports that we all watch, there's usually kind of an alpha personality that would take over, right? And they're all three sharks, all of them. And the fact that they're playing, first of all, the fact they all press is impressive to me. I think all three of them could be easily deployed in a different system where they didn't have to do as much work and be just as effective as they are now. But the fact they all three press, Harder going above and beyond today, I think, in that regard. And then you have just this clinicality of finishing. And that's where I think, Abdullah, I'll pass the ball back to you for a little chat on Sam Kerr, who, might not have had the quickest starts to her Chelsea career, but is definitely looking like she's in good form now. Only the one miss today that I can remember, but ended up with 2 goals anyway.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think that's Sam Kerr in a nutshell. I mean, she's so good with her movement and her positioning that she gets into so many good positions that she's able to almost fashion chances just by being in good positions and being able to anticipate. And like you said, she probably missed about one chance that we can think of notably, but still scoring 2 goals and just having an all-round performance, the pressing, the interchanges. I mean, what else can you ask for from your number 9? And, I guess the cobwebs from the summer holiday have worn off. And if this is Sam Kerr just coming off her summer holiday, I dread to think what she's going to be like when she's really in the flow 4, 5, 6 games into it, when we get into the Champions League group stages and whatnot. But now I think Kerr is continuously proving that she is up there as, top 2 best centre forwards in world football. And Miedema is probably there right now with her in terms of the competition, and with Ada Hegerberg still out injured and just coming back, there's a real claim to stake that these two can be running away with it for the season.
We've already touched on Kirby a little bit, Jessy, but I think a last word on Fran today, who was probably not as present in or around the box, but did so much great pressing for me that, her goal was just easily deserved. And then she kind of had an easy day the rest of the time.
Yeah. And I think, she's someone, again, who it just feels like it's easy to forget what she does, because she does it so consistently and so well across the pitch, whether that is scoring, whether that is the press. I was even impressed with her like dropping back to link up play and those kind of things, so yeah, just what a player. And as we've touched on, 50 goals for only White and Miedema to have done that, pending Nikita Paris I think is also on 49, so maybe by the time this has come out Nikita Paris might have also joined them. But yeah, what a player. And it's great to see her playing with Sam Kerr and Pernille Harder, who have maybe been more traditionally globally recognized, and you see the way that they speak about her, and that speaks volumes. Sam Kerr will do interviews where she's like, Fran Kirby's the best player in the world. Like, I just think it's great to see her colleagues, do you say colleagues about footballers, I guess, give her that kind of recognition, which I think she really deserves. And maybe because it's never gone so well at England for her, she doesn't get it in the same way that Harder and Kerr does, but she properly deserves it.
I like using coworkers when discussing footballers. I think that's good. Yeah. Why do you think that is, Jessy? I'll pass it back to you. Why do you think that she is not consistently named alongside some of those other players that you just referenced in kind of the all-time pantheon of women's players?
I do think the England thing has a big factor there. I think we've never seen her really go and have a standout tournament. I know there's been a lot of difficulties in the past between Chelsea and England and what Kirby's load looks like and frustrations around that. I think obviously we would love to see her have an amazing tournament at some point, and I'm sure if she can, stay fit and everyone can keep her in good shape, hopefully we'll see that next year in England at the Euros. But I think that's probably the thing. And, also, I think, again, there are maybe those international moments, Champions League final would have been one of them, where if you have a great performance in one game, that just elevates you to a different level because there's so much attention on it. And Chelsea haven't had that moment when you look at players like Harder, she did that for Wolfsburg. Kerr's obviously done it internationally for Australia. And you even look at how those Barcelona players have been elevated from that Champions League final, how quickly that crystallizes in people's minds. So I think Fran will still get her moment because I think she's just getting better and better.
Absolutely. Well, someone who doesn't think that we're getting better and better, Emma Hayes. Apparently, Emma just came out after the match and, the 6-1 was a blip on the radar for her. The quote is, "I don't think we were very good," which I think if you were looking at the men's team performance against City, you could say that. This was interesting, though. Her quote in totality, though, was, "We've got world-class attackers, and that's what they showed today. I don't think we were very good. I thought we were poor. We were poor in the first half by our standards, and we were up 3-0. I think we're miles better than we were last year, and our build-up and our possession. I wasn't happy with the first half. I changed something within the flow of the game because I felt we were getting overloaded, and I felt there were spaces that Harder could exploit, and we gave her the chance to do that. Pernille, I'm so proud of her for that goal because I know how much she puts into it. She's a top player." So that's a long, meandering way of saying we could have scored 10. I don't know kind of what's going on there. Abdullah, what are your thoughts on the quote, "We're miles better than we were last year"?
It's, if anything, that's a good sign if she's saying that we're miles better than we were last year. But then if she's saying now, for example, we're miles better than we were last year, and our build up and position was good, but I wasn't happy with the first half. I mean, I think there's two parts to this. I think we can break it down here. Last season, they were really, really good. And, we all thought, okay, is there another level that this team can get up to? And I think we all thought that there was maybe a little bit there, but, the way they were being clinical, and obviously until the latter stages of the Champions League, when people started saying, okay, maybe there are a few places of improvement. But I think we're already starting to see that they're bridging that gap. At least going forward, they're definitely bridging that gap between what they were last year and what they are this year. But the fact that if she's saying, all right, I even we were 3-0 up and I was seeing holes and I wanted to fix it, I'm actually really happy about that. Mainly because I think last season there were times when she was a bit late to change things and they were getting a bit predictable. But if she's saying now, I'm not happy with this and I want to change it, and you already scored 3 goals, that can't be that can anything be, but that's good. I mean, then you're thinking, I just lost my words there, but then you're like, all right, I can see that there are issues, and then this is how the team gets better, and this is how the team evolves within the season itself. So by the time you get to the knockout stages and in the latter half of the season, you've really developed over the season and gotten better as the players have gotten to the rhythm and flow of the season. So overall, I think the coach good, and great start from the team.
I guess, Jessy, no one's going to be a harder critic of her team than Emma will be throughout the year. And especially if this was supposed to be a top 4, kind of clash, it didn't really shape out that way, right? So is she just going a little extra because the level of competition wasn't there today, or is it something that she really, you took something, similar out of the performance, which is, oh, we got lucky to not get exploited because United didn't have the talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think for a start, this is like the most Emma Hayes line in the world because one, she loves talking like this, and two, as a manager, like, what are you going to do? Come out and say, oh, they were rubbish, so that's why we won. I mean, it'd be refreshing. If someone was going to do it, it probably would be Emma Hayes. But no, I think she picks up on some good points. I think, there were moments in transition where I thought we struggled. I thought there were gaps that opened up between defence and midfield. And I do think it is a bit of a worry how much we are... It's a tricky one because I wouldn't say we were relying on opposition errors, but I do feel like we're not seeing a huge amount in back to front successful attacks. We're pressing well, we're turning over the ball. That is stuff those mistakes are put on by us, especially today. The Megan Finnegan one from a couple of weeks ago, that is an example of something where you've just got nothing to do with it, really. But, today I think it was more that was the way we play. But when we're thinking about those really high-level games, those Champions League games, the Barcelonas, when you press them, they will just play around your press. So at some point, you have to also know what you're doing with the ball and be able to go back to front. And I think that's probably what Hayes is getting at, because I think we still haven't really seen that from Chelsea this season.
Yeah, I'd agree with that point. I think there are a couple of instances today where it was just so easy to get through, right? Even when the 3 or 4 times that AKB touched the ball in the second half, it seemed like that she, like, when she rolled it out, there really wasn't the consistent, all right, we'll work it around the back line. We'll get it up through the midfield. We'll have a great diagonal out to Guro Wrighton or to Neve Charles and play it forward. And then we'll have 4 or 5 passes before we get there. A lot of Chelsea's goals come from breaks, right? Where one player has a lot of possession of the ball. They dribble it as far as they can. They make an incredibly, to me, obvious pass to someone who's wide open and will put it in the back of the net. And that works in the WSL. But as we saw last year in the Champions League, there's a level of sophistication that goes higher than that to be able to win the whole tournament. And so I think that is, you're probably going to see this as, like, in some of these, mid-table clashes. I don't know. It might end up being kind of a training exercise, right, Jessy, where they try playing a little bit differently once they've maybe got their goal and just work into a better passing movement for later in the season.
Yeah, well, I think also it's frustrating as a manager because in some ways, because obviously you want to win and win by loads of goals. That's great. But again, if you're, 3-0 up at half time, yeah, of course you want your team to carry on working on your attacking patterns of play, but it's a totally different thing for them to do. And of course, you're already going to have your mind on, oh, we've got Birmingham midweek, what's happening next week, all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's why I'm excited about the Champions League group stage, because I think they're the games where hopefully we'll be forced to learn those things and make more of that kind of effort in that sense. Because at the moment, given that we've played United and Everton, both of whom are supposed to be these 4th place teams, maybe we'll see more of it from teams who just want to sit in a low block, because then you can't necessarily press them in the same way. These are both sides who wanted to play out from the back and they just weren't very good at it. But yeah, I think it's a tough one to figure out as a manager.
So I think the passing leads us to talk about the midfield, right? I think this is the area that we've probably talked about more often than any other on the pitch, maybe wing backs aside, but it all kind of plays together. Specifically, when we look at the double pivot, we had another combo today of Ingle and Leupolz in the midfield. Obviously, the match was out of hand pretty early, so I don't know how much you can take away from this from just a pure control perspective, but it did seem like they were getting in a better rhythm, Abdullah. So for me, I guess, talk a little bit about how you thought it looked, and then the different ways that it might look in the future.
I think kind of from the first minute, I think we knew that United were going to play some sort of football. They've shown in the last couple of weeks that they're not afraid to play on the ball and actually get their good players, their attacking players on the ball and kind of play from midfield. So it needed the current midfielders, whoever the double pivot was going to be, to really be positionally strong, and then when they had the ball, to not let it turn over easy and just really get the ball out and pass it well. And from the first whistle, Ingle and Leupolz seemingly did that. They were able to keep control of the ball. I felt like this was a slightly, again, like we said, large control portion of the match. They were already 1-0 down within 90 seconds, but I think it was a redemption game for Leupolz. She was out of form. She was dropped for the last game, but I think she came in and she really felt. It almost felt like she felt more at ease playing next to Ingle because she knew she had the defensive security and the composure of Ingle next to her, so she could step up and be a little bit more aggressive. And she knew that if she missed it, she had kind of the positional awareness and the movement of Ingle behind her to kind of cover up in behind. And especially when playing against United's false nine and Ella Toon, I think it's a little bit easier for someone like Ingle to probably step in, kind of control that area of where Toon might be and not allow Carter to be pulled out too much. So that I think that combination as well, and then kind of just servicing the front three, and kind of the whole point of playing this front 3-4-3 is allow the front three to kind of do their thing. And I felt like this double pivot was able to make that happen. They were able to be defensively solid enough so that the wing backs could push up, especially when you're playing Charles and Wrighton. And really, I think it felt good. However, in the second, and then obviously we saw what happened in the second half when they brought Alessia Russo and kind of they changed from more of a false nine to a static, not even a static, but like an actual focal point. And I think that changed things. So there might be, I think this duo is got potential. I think it needs to be tested again against probably an opposition where I don't think Chelsea are going to be scoring their first goal in 90 seconds in every game. So I would be interested to see against another, maybe a top team, maybe a little bit different, but I want to see them against another 4th, 5th place team and see how these two do against them, because you're going to have teams who want to attack Chelsea, and whether they can control it then when the game is poised at 30, 35 minutes in, I think that's where it's going to be key. But I think this combination has potential to move forward with.
I guess, Jessy, no G today, coming back from international break. What are your thoughts on maybe what it lacked?
Yeah, I'm not totally wild about this, to be honest. And I think that's because I can't quite figure out maybe what it's supposed to be doing. I liked it at the start when it felt like Ingle was sitting back more and it was Leupolz going forward. She was a great pressing addition to that front three. And I think really helped box Man United in. But as the game went on, it was kind of like sometimes Ingle would go forward and Leupolz would stay back and vice versa. And I felt like that then left these large bits of space kind of on that left-hand side of the pitch, just ahead of the defenders, which, it just felt like that's where the goal came from. United had a couple of opportunities where they were just able to really run into that gap, and I felt like that was kind of because Ingle and Leupolz kept rotating who went forward. You don't have one player kind of sitting back and taking in that view of the pitch to see where the space needs to be boxed off. So I kind of wonder if that other bit of the double pivot is still kind of G's to have with one of Ingle or Leupolz to sit back a bit more. Obviously, again, it didn't really matter today, but I didn't think long term it necessarily felt like exactly the right answer.
One of the interesting things that happened in this match, and I did want to touch on it because I think you guys have mentioned Jessie Fleming a lot in previous recordings, but when she came in, it looked like she was playing more of a number 10 role with with two up top and was kind of the link player between the midfield pivot and the top to me. Did you guys get that sense? And is that a variation on this formation that suits her athletic gifts and allows for a little bit more cover for the pivot?
Yeah, I think, it is. But I think also it's so hard when you're just being thrown on at the end of the game. It's like, the amount of time Drew Spence got in the box, it was like, is Drew Spence going to play number 9? Probably not. But, I think it is an option. And that's what I think is why so many people want to see Jessie Fleming, because she has such a large number of skills that allow her to play kind of from that midfield role all the way up into a more attacking one. I think the reason why I still think Fleming is the best choice for that more attacking bit of the pivot, because ultimately that front three is set. So you're not going to see Fleming be able to nail down that starting position. For me, I think it's got to be that she takes G's role if she can kind of prove that she can do the trickery and magic that I think G can do. I think she's got that ability, and I think she offers a lot more defensively than Chi. But I feel like that maybe is still the question mark that's there, especially when we've seen what a good start to the season G had, and kind of was one of the few players who came out of the Arsenal game, for example, like still looking good. So, I think Fleming's got the ability to play as that 10, but you're not going to ultimately break up the front three to allow her to do it, really, are you?
Yeah, it would be like a special circumstances type of scenario, or maybe like a Conti Cup scenario if we look ahead. It's a possibility. I was curious about it because she obviously got her first Chelsea goal today, Abdullah, and the team rallied around her at the end. I think they all sprinted out to go congratulate her at the final whistle, which was. This team is just heartwarming as hell. They just give me all the warm fuzzies. But talk a little bit about her performance and just maybe touch on what Jessy was referencing earlier about the role.
Yeah, no, I think for me, every time she comes on, whether it's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, she just seems to be able to put in a good enough performance where you take notice, right? Even if the game is 5-1 up, 4-1 up, and she comes on for 5 minutes or 3 minutes, you're like, she has that touch, and she goes, oh, you go, oh, it's a really good touch. Oh, it's a really good pass, and you see these things, and you wonder when she gets to play 90 minutes, a full game, are we going to see that? I agree with Jessy in saying that, and that she's going to have to take one of the double pivot positions if she wants to be a full-time starter for this team. Unless there's an injury to the front three or there's a rotation, like you said, Conti Cup, like you said, that's the only position I can see her, a time starter rather, I can see her playing there. I think playing her in the double pivot, and again, just kind of touching on what we said earlier, this is where I think the Champions League games are going to be important. There are extra games now coming into the season where you can rotate a little bit and play your other, especially in Chelsea's case, where there's so much strength and depth that you can rotate one or two players and still expect the same level of output. So I could see Jessie Fleming coming in against a Juventus, in the Champions League and playing alongside a Leupolz or Ingle or someone and really showing her class over there. Because I think now, while we still need to see her play consistently, I think we can all see that she has the potential to play against the Juventus and really show her skill set over there, rather than having to play against an Aston Villa, rather than have to play against these modest teams where you kind of know that she's going to be able to dominate and get on the ball and do things, but I want to see her against the Juventus and one of these mid to top teams where, you're like, if you can do it against this team, then there's, then we've solidified what we really think about you. And it's kind of theory into application sort of thing.
Okay, let's move on to the back three and kind of round it out and throw the wing backs in there for fun. How are you guys liking Carter in her second consecutive game playing in the middle? I think that she looked pretty assured today from a passing perspective. I think the back three really flowed. It was probably the best that Millie's looked this season for me. What are your thoughts on the back three, Jessy, and how do you see this kind of solidity forming throughout the season?
Yeah, the thing that stood out the most to me is actually I felt like when we were in possession it was a 4. And Magda was playing as left back, basically. That's like really what I felt. I don't know whether it was because, say, having Leupolz, who's played more at fullback, made Emma more comfortable with, that kind of rotation around to do that. But I thought that was really interesting, especially when we've been talking about how do we make sure Magda still gets on the ball when she's in this, having her in that left back role in possession to be able to move forward. There are downsides to that as well. We saw her get caught out of possession when, Kirsty Hansen was able to nip in behind her, and, there was a good chance there for United. But I thought that was interesting to see, looking to get her on the ball more. I thought Millie Bright had a really, really good game. She just looked so much more confident than she has this season, at doing what she does best, reading balls that are coming into the box and just hoofing them as far as they will go, which I just think is such an underrated talent to have as a centre-back. But Carter, I thought she looked good. I thought she had some nervy moments, but she didn't, capitulate under them. Whereas I think in the past, it's felt like she has one nervy moment and then they come more and more and more, and what happens gets worse. Whereas it felt today, there was a point where Carter and Charles were kind of trying to play the ball together, and it just got a bit messy. And I think it actually Carter managed to draw a foul as a result. And I just feel like in the past she would maybe have allowed someone to go past her or create a more dangerous situation. So I thought that was, on the one hand, a good thing, but on the other hand, it still felt like it spoke to me that this Carter and Charles, at least in combo, feels a bit naive at points in time. Maybe playing with the ball when you should just do the Millie Bright and recognize the danger and put it out of play, that kind of thing. But it was interesting, and ultimately United did look good at points going forward, and Chelsea didn't really concede many chances. For all that United were open at the back, they did have a lot of the ball in midfield. We saw those possession stats, and they didn't really create a huge amount. And I think that is, ultimately testament to the defence.
Abdullah, do you share those sentiments?
100%. Yeah, I agree. I think the defense looked as assured as they've been, in this season. I think, like we said after the Arsenal game, it was a new system. They needed to get used to it, and Emma made we talked about. She made that tweak. She made that change that she recognized something needs to change. I think moving Carter into the middle and having Magda and Millie as the widest centre backs, I think that's worked out, and I think it's gonna grow game on game, and kind of referencing the whole Millie Bright, that no nonsense type of play, Rudiger vibes, Rudiger vibes all day. But I think you need that. I think that's a dying breed. That used to be the norm back in the day, but now no nonsense centre backs are the dying breed. And I think there are times when you just need that. You need to relieve the pressure. Just hoof it into row Z. You don't need to play it out. If there's an opportunity, sure, no problem. And Millie can do that. She's got a great diagonal on her. She can play out from the back. But when you need to, just get it out. I remember there was one moment in the first half where I think she was one-on-one with Leah Galton, if I remember correctly, and she just stood with her one-on-one, got her to the byline and took it out for a throw-in, and it was an inch-perfect tackle. And I think her being able to step out and play, wider and be able to dominate like this, having the defense behind her, the cover, I think it works well, and I think Emma's recognized this, and this could be the back three that we look at going forward.
Yeah, from the first match I ever watched Millie Bright, she's the one that stood out to me. I love a hard challenge. I love someone who's willing to go in full blooded and committed, and she's definitely that of all things. Is there anyone else that you guys want to touch on from this performance that you thought stood out? Maybe Guro Wrighton, Abdullah. You wrote the script, so
of course.
Okay, so
I have to give a shout out to Guro Wrighton, not just because I got the jersey come in this morning. That's irrelevant to the whole conversation. But no, I real talk, jokes aside, I think she's been really, really one of the more consistent players, and I think she has grown into this left wing back role ever since she played it at preseason. And I think when we all started the season, I don't think anybody expected her to be the first choice, or rather, the first one to be playing this role. I thought she may come in rotation option. Anderson will start. She's gained the trust. She comes back in after the Olympics. But I think Wrighton's really given Chelsea this different method and different supply that she can give to the front three, because now it's not just about playing through the middle, going to the half spaces, making and relying on the front three to create something for each other. If it doesn't work, you've got the overlapping option of Reiten, and the amount of times she overlaps and provides almost inch-perfect crosses for the front 2, 3, and then this allows them to all to get to the box. I think that's been a very, very important part of Chelsea being able to break down. And I think in the future, against these low blocks, that is going to be an important way of breaking teams down, because if you can't go through a central low block, they're going to leave the wide spaces open. And with this front three, sooner rather than later, one of these opportunities is going to go in, and you're going to need a prolific winger to be able to do that. And in this case, Reiten is being able to fulfill that. Again, I'm keen to see how she is against Wolfsburg, if she is going to start that game in the Champions League, next week. But but otherwise, I'm really, really impressed with Kerr Reiten at left wing back.
All right, well, that leads us to our player of the match poll, or star of the match, since player of the match is apparently trademarked. So eat your heart out with star of the match. This was close. Okay, we don't typically get, out of a sample size of 200, this close of a poll. It's usually a little bit more lopsided. So look, Pernille Harder barely edging out Sam Kerr with 34.5% of the vote to 34%. Fran Kirby getting 27.5%, and then poor Guro is only getting 4%. We gotta boost those numbers up in future polls. But look, I think we're all okay with that, aren't we, guys? Pernille Harder, kind of your key standout player from this match.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, let's leave it at that. We don't have to beat the dead horse. I think, look, we're going to look at the table. The big one is still yet to play. We're about 15 minutes away from Arsenal and City playing, which could be a really important match in the kind of future standings, future look at the table. But right now, as of this very moment, Arsenal and City yet to play, so we're hoping for a draw out of that. That would be really nice.
Yeah.
We have Tottenham, just as everyone predicted, at the top of the table with 9 points. Okay, only 4 goals scored though, so I'm not exactly sure how they're doing this. Villa, obviously in second, just as we all thought of at the beginning of the season, on 7 points. Chelsea on 6 points, with Brighton right now, both 3 matches played, tied at 6. Arsenal on 6, obviously yet to play. United on 6, having been soundly beaten by us. And then West Ham on 4 points, and City kind of bringing up the rear with only 3 points. It's a big match for them. To drop too early in the season would be weird. Jesse, you're looking at me like, oh, is that? I mean, if they don't at least get a point today, is that going to be a real issue for them?
Yeah, I think if they don't win today, they're done. To be honest, yeah.
Oh.
Well,
Wow.
So I will say is I looked into this for a piece I did when they lost to Spurs, and I looked at losing to teams outside of the top 3, depending on who you are, and like going on to win the league. And the only team who had done it was Chelsea, because obviously we lost to Brighton last year. But the point was we lost to Brighton and then did not lose to Arsenal or Manchester City. So I just think that kind of speaks to, once you've dropped those points to Tottenham, that has to kind of be it. Because those 3 points are what Arsenal and Chelsea will just like hoover up for the rest of the season. So that's kind of why I think if they lose today, it's done.
We predicted City to win the league. this is
3 matches
not good
in.
for our predictions. Yeah, great.
All right. Well, hey, yeah. Let's hope that door remains open for Chelsea. But Everton, Leicester, Reading, and Birmingham City bringing up the rear here. Everton did get their first win of the season over Birmingham City. It should be noted that they are not going to remain winless. But look, Chelsea coming up from a scheduling perspective. Birmingham City in the FA Cup quarterfinal. This is last year's tournament being resumed. So we have the quarterfinal there on Wednesday, September 29th. Then we go and play Brighton at home next weekend, which is, looking at the table, is a pretty big match, all being said, and especially because We lost to them last year, so hopefully a little bit of payback. And then the first group stage match of the Women's Champions League is on Wednesday, October 6th. And so this is against Wolfsburg. It's at home. So Chelsea have a couple of matches at home in a row between Brighton and Hove Albion, Wolfsburg, and Leicester City. So we're going to be home for a minute. So get down to Kings Meadow if you're able to and go watch this excellent team. They erased the sadness from the weekend performance on the other side. So really excited about that. Any thoughts, Abdullah, as you're looking at the schedule and things that you want to look out for?
Yeah, I think we said, the two Champions League games. We've got Wolfsburg on the 6th of October, and then I think Juventus away on the 13th. It's going to be a fascinating game, again, one that I think will be good. And then we've got obviously the double header against Servette, the Swiss team, in match day 3 and match day 4 of the Champions League. And just kind of casually in between there is Man City on the 14th of November, away from home. So just a casual case of Man City in there. Now imagine they lose today and then they lose against Chelsea on the 14th. And it's really curtains for this Man City team. And potentially top 4 is in doubt. Potentially.
I feel like I've been burned by the get too cocky against Man City prediction. So I'm going to say that they're probably going to win today and hope that the reverse hijinks that I'm putting on them actually come into effect. So
we'll find out in 10 minutes.
We'll find out in 10 minutes. That's right. So we are actually going to get out of here so we can all go watch that match. But thank you for listening. Please go rate and review on Apple Podcasts if you can. We are going to be back every week. This team is too good not to talk about. So thank you very much for listening. And until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.